Since stepping down as the First Minister of Scotland, Humza McYousaf has found himself a new grift. He's gone and invented himself his own tartan, which you can purchase and have made into a kilt or a bow tie or even a face mask to protect you from the latest virus that's been used to keep us in a state of fear.
I'm absolutely delighted to have officially registered the Yousaf tartan. I hope you like it as much as I do. The green there to represent Pakistan, my grandparents' home.
He used green to represent Pakistan, but of course he tells us that he's as Scottish as they come. Born in Scotland, raised in Scotland, educated in Scotland.
I'm about as Scottish as they come. Born in Scotland, raised in Scotland, educated in Scotland. You cut me open and I'm about as Scottish as you come.
Yes, he was educated in Scotland, but his education was at the most prestigious private school in the country, where it costs over £160,000 to put one child through from nursery to high school. So he's not like your average guy walking down Sauchiehall Street. I notice in the video that he's happily strolling freely through this park. There's no security to protect him, but only a few months ago he was playing the victim card and claiming that he would leave Scotland because he was terrified to be there because people had the audacity to criticise him.
But the truth of the matter is, I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom. I have for some time really worried about the rise of Islamophobia.
He's such a fanny. So if I went to live in Pakistan, would it be reasonable to assume that my grandkids could end up in the most senior political position in the country and that they could spit out their hatred for the natives? Brown, 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 like his white, white, white comments. Pakistan have got their own national ceremonial dress. Would we be able to modify it to pay tribute to Scotland? Do you think you'd be welcomed in Pakistan? I mean, I don't know, the British government recommend against going there even as a tourist, so don't think you'd be welcomed there as an immigrant. I also had a look at the Australian government's travel advice for Pakistan, and it's hilarious. Terrorist groups hostile to foreign interests operate in Pakistan. The threat of attack remains very high. Terrorists may also target places frequented by foreigners. Reconsider your need to travel to Pakistan overall due to the volatile security situation and threat of terrorism, kidnapping, violent crime, and the risk of civil unrest. Yet Humza pretends that he's scared of being in Scotland and will flee. Flee to where? This place, Pakistan. He weaseled his way to the top, told the predominantly white population that they should be ashamed of themselves, that white people hold the majority of senior positions in the country, and he's still free to walk in a public park with no security. We aren't out to get him, yet he continually plays the victim card. No, the locals in Pakistan would have us lynched if we were to try a stunt like the one Humza's trying here. Okay, so if it's really just 3 generations and then you can call yourself a native, then my grandkids can join in with the scam of welcome to country ceremonies that Aboriginals in Australia have been manipulated into performing, all at the expense of the taxpayer. You want to learn more about that? Then see this other video. They get paid a fortune for the ceremonial setting of fire to some leaves from a bush. I also took a visit to IslamicTartan.com because when you think about Scotland, you automatically think about kilts, the Loch Ness Monster, Iron Brew, deep fried Mars bars, and Islam. What's next? Buddhist English Morris dancing, Irish Hindu leprechauns, those famous Welsh choirs having to belt out the Islamic call to prayer. Humza is an elitist, and he probably has almost as much disdain for the Pakistani working class as he does for the Scottish working class. His interest is primarily in Clan McYousaf, certainly not in the Scottish people, and certainly not in the Scottish working class. It still surprises me how many people in Scotland are sucked in by his patter. People learn nothing from history. Scots often point the finger at the English, and while there are legitimate grievances with the English in the past, it was often the Scottish elders, the elites, who would sell out the commoners. Who was it that betrayed William Wallace? Among others, it was a Scottish nobleman named John Menteith, and many of the Scottish elite were responsible for, or they were at least complicit in, the Highland clearances. And more recently you had Nicola Sturgeon, who was constantly fighting for Scottish independence, but if we got it, then she would have immediately betrayed us by handing us over to the EU. And we still haven't gotten to the bottom of whatever dodgy scams her and her husband were up to behind the scenes. This all feels very similar to the Australian Aboriginals being sold out by their elites. Yes, they have a right to have a grievance over the past, but these grievances are used by their elites to control them, to keep them down and keep them embracing victimhood. Many of the Aboriginal elites who benefit from this have the tiniest amount of Aboriginal blood in them, like this guy, Marcus Stewart, who actually wouldn't look out of place walking down Sauchiehall Street, unlike Humza, or Bruce Pascoe, who didn't even know he was Aboriginal until he was in his mid-30s when he discovered some distant ancestor of his was Aboriginal, and he's since gone on to make millions by exploiting those who he calls his people. Bruce Pascoe, a phony Aboriginal, just like Humza Yousaf is a phony Scotsman.